Welcome back to the Small Business Toolbox, where we are looking at the small... What we're looking at? Welcome back to the Small Business Toolbox, where we are looking at the nuts and bolts of self-employment in the UK. If you're watching this on the day it came out, you've got about 15 days to get your tax return done for last tax year. It's shameful. I haven't done mine yet. Anyway, I wasn't planning on doing a tax return video this year because I did one last year and normally it doesn't change that much from year to year. But, oh my word, this year the tax return system has changed a little bit. It's mostly kind of cosmetic changes, to be honest. Nothing to panic about. But I thought I've got to show you the first kind of the refreshed version of the online tax return submission system in the UK, now that it doesn't look like a bad 1990s webpage anymore. So, as per usual, I know you love these sort of videos, I'm going to take you through a really simple online submission for a fictitious self-employed business. It's going to be the simplest tax return ever, and it assumes a number of things. My list of assumptions. I'm assuming you've got one self-employment. I'm assuming you're using the cash basis for accounting. If you don't know what that is, I've already done a video all about it and there's a link in the description below. Cash basis is basically a very simple way of doing a UK tax return. But it's not for everyone. Speak to an accountant. I'm assuming we've got a fictitious turnover of £30,000 a year with £10,000 business expenses and capital expenditure all kind of lumped together, which gives a taxable profit of £20,000. As per usual, I'm assuming there's nothing weird about your tax situation. I'm assuming you've had your letter from HMRC, which looks a bit like that. I'm also assuming you've already got your government gateway login ID already sorted. That can take a little while to sort out. If you've left it until the last minute, I would suggest you speak to HMRC very quickly. And as per usual, I am not qualified in any way to give you accountancy advice. So please don't ask me specific accountancy questions because I cannot advise you on accountancy matters. You need to speak to an accountant. Get a good accountant. I've said it on pretty much every video I've ever made. A good accountant will probably save you more than they cost you. But assuming you've already spoken to an accountant, and I've had a lot of situations where the accountant said to me, you know, you can really do this yourself. Your tax situation's very simple. You don't need me to fill in a couple of boxes online for you. You know, most good accountants will be quite honest with you and tell you that. But sometimes they need to drill into your financial affairs in quite a bit of detail to save you having to pay money to the government that you don't have to give to the government. Do we still have a government? Also, don't forget you can go to smallbusinesstoolbox.uk and there's a bunch of extra, hopefully helpful information on the Small Business Toolbox website. I'm always trying to update that whenever I get a chance. And you can also follow me on Patreon, patreon.com/smallbusinesstoolbox, and there's a few extra bits and pieces, things like spreadsheets and some extra kind of supporting information that isn't available via YouTube or the website is often available on Patreon only. So pop on to patreon.com/smallbusinesstoolbox and you can get extra stuff on there. $1. Let's plough on and have a look at the newly updated self-assessment online tax return submission system thing for the UK. Right, let's do this. So, let's talk about what URL you actually need to go to first. We have got a multitude of websites that you can go to fill in your tax return for some reason. We've got this URL here, access.tax.service. Anyway, we've got that one. We've got this one, another different one, gov.uk, login, file, self-assessment tax returns. This kind of is the closest to the official one that comes on your request to fill in a tax return. If in doubt, go to whatever address it tells you on the letter that you've had from HMRC. And at the moment, it says that you need to go to www.tax.service.gov.uk/gg/sign-in. Catchy URL there, HMRC. And of course, the one I've always used is online.hmrc.gov.uk, which is much easier to remember. Take your pick. I don't know what the official URL is anymore because we seem to be getting bombarded with 1,000 different websites that you should be going to, but they all kind of go to the same place, so I wouldn't worry too much. So you get to this, and you need to log in with your government gateway user ID and password. If you don't already have that, as per usual, you should have sorted that out ages ago. Pull your finger out and follow all of the instructions for getting your government gateway user ID and password. So you would sign in using that. And all we're going to do is complete the tax year 2718 in this case. Let me just close some of these tabs that we don't need anymore. And all we're going to do, scroll down to the start now. And look at this, it's all shiny and new looking. This is the first time this has had an update for a long time. So let's fill it in. It looks like all the same questions as usual. Okay, so far all of the questions are more or less the same as usual. I commit to providing honest and accurate information. Of course I do. Were you an employee? We're going to say no. Now here's this new trading allowance that we've briefly chatted about in other videos. Was your turnover £1,000 or more in total from all self-employments? We're going to say yes to that because we're going to put in a turnover of 30,000. There's a reasonable chance that if you put no there, that there's going to be very, very little to fill in a tax return because it'll probably not give you the self-employment section. I'm not sure. I might try that on a separate video. How many self-employments? 1. We're going to call it Andy McDrums as usual. Were you in a partnership? No. Did you receive income from UK land or property? No. Foreign income. I had a question about whether if you do work for, like if you do YouTube or freelance work or if you sell products abroad, should you be filling in the foreign income section? And my understanding is no, you don't. And that is confirmed if you click the little help button here. And it says in here that this is for interest, dividends, distributions, and reported income from offshore funds and all that sort of thing. And if you scroll all the way down on help, the following items should not be included in the foreign section, but in the relevant section of your tax return instead. It's terribly worded, but I think what it's saying is, if any of this applies, you just put it in your tax return. It doesn't need to go into the foreign section. And here we've got foreign income earned by your business or partnership goes in the self-employment or partnership sections of your tax return. And basically, by my understanding, if you've sold things to other countries, that is just normal money coming into your business. It's not something that you would fill in the foreign section of your tax return. But as per usual, if you've got any doubts on that side, please speak to an accountant or HMRC for clarification. Disposal of chargeable assets, we're saying no. Save. In the tax year, 6th of April, did we have any interest? We're just going to say no to all of these to keep it simple, but if you did have dividends or interest or whatever, this is where you would say yes, and then you would get the extra relevant forms included as part of your tax return. But we're going to just say no to all of that. Did you make contributions towards a personal pension? We're going to say no. Charity, no. Again, we're going to just keep all of this simple. The one bit that you definitely do want to look into if you want to transfer 10% of your personal allowance to your spouse or civil partner, that is definitely worth doing if it's applicable for you. I'm going to say no for now. But if you're not using your full personal allowance, it's a good idea to transfer some of it over to your partner or spouse. Any other tax reliefs? No. No, no, no. And here we are, ready to fill in the return. So far, okay, it looks a bit different, but all the questions are more or less exactly the same. So Nothing really to worry about. You can see we've filled in all the personal information. We need to give a bit of information about self-employment next. So you can click on each of these sections and dive into it, but normally there's just a next button at the bottom. And here, look, delete your entire tax return. If you make a complete hash of it and need to start again, that's the button you need to press, and that will delete your whole tax return and get you back to the beginning, and then you can just start the whole process all over again. Next. We're going to assume turnover isn't over 85,000. Foster carer, all this sort of stuff. This is all kind of more niche, unusual stuff. Again, most of this sort of stuff, if any of this applies, you should absolutely have an accountant involved. Look at this bit. My turnover is £1,000 or less from all self-employments, but I wish to voluntarily pay Class 2 NICs. That's quite a key one, because remember, if you're self-employed but you're earning less than £1,000, you could end up in a situation where you're not paying any national insurance, and eventually that's going to have a negative impact on your pension. So if you voluntarily want to pay national insurance, it's not very much, then you can do by ticking that box if you've got a low turnover. We've got a box here for the construction industry scheme. Whole set of different rules apply for CIS. And we've got my total turnover is less than £1,000 and I've made a loss. Again, get an accountant to advise on that. For all of this, I'm going to assume none of these apply. Description of business. Again, for my simplified example here, I'm just going to say drum teacher. You don't need to give war and peace here. I can't remember what the character limit is, but it's not very high. Let me just try to type some random stuff in to show you. Will that let me save? 42 characters. That's not very much. So don't go overboard. Just pop a fictitious postcode in for now. Has your business name changed? No. When did it start? We'll leave that. Has it ceased trading? No. Save. Date your books or accounts are made up to. So, as per usual, if you're following the normal tax year, that's going to be 5th of April 2018 for this particular one, for the 17-18 tax year. And then here is a big question whether or not you are using cash basis. I've already made videos about cash basis. We're going to say yes. That is absolutely something you need to seek advice on from your accountant. This box is probably the most important box to get right on your tax return, other than the actual numbers you're typing in. Okay, here we go with the figures. Turnover, 30,000. Any other business income? Nope. Trading income allowance? Nope. Expenses, how would you like to declare it? Let me just show you in help. You can choose to record your expenses either as a single total value or as a detailed breakdown. We're just going to do a single value. And we're saying 10,000 expenses. Save. We've just bundled all of the expenses and capital expenditure into the expenses figure that we've already put in. So all of this can be left blank. Goods or services for your own use. Losses from previous years, blah, blah, blah. We're assuming no on all of that. More stuff about losses carried forward. We're assuming no on all of that. This is for if you're a subcontractor as part of the CIS scheme. So that can be left blank. Are you exempt from paying Class 4 NICs? Probably not. Read the help. Any other information? Nope. Save. And look at that. That's that bit done. You could add another self-employment in there if you wanted to, if you run more than one business. Remember, we're not talking about limited companies here. This is self-employment. Save and continue. It's now telling us about Class 2 national insurance that we have to pay, £148.20 for the year. It's a bargain. and you should pay it to make sure that you're going to get a full pension when you retire, unless you've already had a qualifying year through other means. But if you're not already working for a company where you're paying national insurance, then it's a good idea to try and keep your national insurance account up to date. You can check the status of your national insurance account through the HMRC website and find out how many qualifying pension years you've got. It's worth checking. And here is the box that you would tick for voluntary contributions. We're going to say no for now to keep things simple. Underpaid tax. This is one of these kind of double negative bits. It says only select no if the amount shown above is not correct. So we want yes. Again, only select no if the amount shown above is not correct. Outstanding debt in your tax code for 1718. Now, I think this is one of the few boxes where you do actually have to type a 0 in. Yeah. So, wow. Much bigger errors than before, which is kind of nice. Don't panic. It just means you need to put a 0. Blah, blah, blah. If you're due a rebate, who's going to receive it? Me. And this is where you would type in your bank account details for if you are due any tax back from the government. You can't leave it blank. It'll come up with an error. But what you can do is just tick that I do not have a bank or building society account. And they'll send you a check instead. So I'm going to do that for now. But generally, you're going to be better off filling that in with your actual bank details. And then any money that you're due back will just automatically get transferred straight to you instead of having to wait for them to send a check out. So I don't advise ticking that box, but I'm just doing it so that we can jump to the next section of the return. Blah, blah, blah. If you owe less than £3,000 in tax, do you want it collected through your tax code for the following year? If you wanted that, you would have had to have done your tax return before the 30th of December. So that's just not an option. Don't know why it even tells you about it, to be honest. Do you need to make any adjustments? Nope. Does this contain provisional or estimated figures? If yes, then you would do yes and tell them why it contains provisional figures. At this stage, the answer should almost certainly be no. This should be the final figures that you can back up all the figures with receipts and your own records if you get audited. Any other information, don't fill that in unless there's something really weird about your tax return, because no one will ever read it. Do you want to attach an attachment? No. And then we check the return. Look at this. Ticks all the way through. And then next to view your calculation. And there we go. We can see the tax calculation here. £2,913.44 tax due, plus a payment on account for next year of £1,382.62, meaning that your total due is £4,296.06. And then you would make a second payment on account on the 31st of July 2019. That's for your following tax year. As per usual, I would suggest you click the View and Print Your Full Calculation button here. And that gives you a more detailed breakdown of your entire tax return. So profit from self-employment minus your personal allowance, tax due on £8,500, and then it's breaking down here. 8,500, 20% is £1,700 in tax, plus class 4 national insurance, which it's worked out for you, of £1,065.24, plus class 2 national insurance gives a total of £1,213.44 plus your income tax. And basically when you add that figure there of your NI, your national insurance, added onto your tax, which is that figure there, and that comes to that total figure there, £2,913.44. And then what they've done is they've estimated the payment due for 31st of January 2019. And note that it tells you here this amount does not take into account any 1718 payments on account that you may have already made. So if you have already made payment on account, just double check when HMRC take your tax money out of your bank account that they have deducted what you've already paid on account. But that should all happen automatically, so don't panic. So from here, I would do print full calculation, and that just gives you a nice PDF version that is printable, and keep that for your own records. So, save and continue. Are you claiming to reduce your 1819 payments on account? So this is where, say for example, you know that you're not going to be making any money in the next tax year, and therefore you shouldn't be paying a payment on account. Well, this is where you would tell them, no, I don't want to pay any money for the following tax year because I know I'm not making any money for that tax year, if that makes sense. So you would just put in here what you want that reduced by. So here, this first payment on account figure here, if you think you shouldn't be paying that, you would make note of that number, and then you would pop it in here and explain why you think you shouldn't be paying that. Again, doesn't need to be War and Peace, it could just be business cease trading or whatever. We're going to say no, save. And look at that, we are at the point where we can view a copy of the tax return. Here's a moment of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a new shiny interface for the tax return. Let's save a copy. I think it has let me save a copy of the tax return without coming up with a crazy box about a 28.8K modem. Well done, HMRC. So anyway, I would definitely advise that you do save a copy of your tax return. Click the save button on a PDF color copy and just keep that filed away so that you've got a record of what you submitted to HMRC. So you should have a copy of your calculation that we did earlier and a copy of the actual return. So from this point you would do save and continue and submit your return, and that would be you done and dusted. I am so pleased that they have updated that. If you are from HMRC and happen to have had any involvement in taking that section out of the tax return where it warns you about having a 28.8K modem, hats off to you. I would love to hear from you. Please drop me a note via the channel, because that was the funniest thing in the world about filling a UK tax return in. But that seems to be gone, which is tremendous news. One slight bug that I've noticed, HMRC, is that when you click save and it brings up your save your return in a new window, the back button doesn't work, obviously, because it's brought it up in a new window. You probably just don't need that back button on that page, I would say. If you do, I can understand why you would want to bring this up on a separate window, and it works for getting your tax return downloaded, which is great. Please don't take this away. It's much, much better. But that back button is meaningless because your main return is in this other browser window that you've already got open. At this point, you would just click save and continue, and then you would do submit your return, and that would be you done and dusted. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to send off a tax return that's full of bogus information. So I'm going to do the thing that I told you about at the start. I'm going to click welcome, and I'm going to browse down to delete your entire return. Are you sure? Yep. And interestingly, that's brought us back to the old looking HMRC system. You know, it was so close to being perfect. That's just one little minor thing that needs to be fixed, I suppose. That should really take you back to, I would say, to this page. Maybe. Anyway, at least things have had a bit of a refresh. There you go, folks. I hope you found that useful. As I say, we have only covered the very kind of simplest business model here, but often that's all that might apply to you. What I would generally always suggest is that if you have got a new business, at least for your first 1 or 2 tax returns, speak to an accountant, get them to do the tax return for you, get them to give you a copy of the return, you run through it with them and make sure you completely understand it. And then normally they will be able to advise whether for future years you could potentially do it yourself, or whether your tax situation is complex enough that it warrants them always doing your tax return for you. Often the accountant will just say, do it yourself. But I can't stress it enough, you have got to get a good accountant to help you, at least for your first couple of returns. Thank you once again for watching. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit subscribe. I'm just a self-employed bloke who's been self-employed for a long time, and I just want to show you a few of the things that I've learned over the years. See you next time.